Hi, this is Ed Zimmerman. I'm an angel investor. I teach venture and angel investing at Columbia Business School, and I am the partner in charge of the tech group at Lowenstein Sandler, a law firm where we do lots of venture deals. Brian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely, thanks. My name is Brian Brackeen. I'm the CEO of Kairos. We're a facial recognition firm based in Miami, Florida. Our areas of expertise are facial recognition in the timekeeping space for punching in and punching out, and in making our available API available to third parties around the world.
Brian, thanks for taking the time to do this with me. And I read the materials you were kind enough to send over in advance and was struck by the term buddy punching, which wasn't at all what I expected it to be. I thought I was about to enter an episode of Fight Club. Do you want to quickly explain buddy punching and how you solve buddy punching?
Absolutely. Buddy punching is a problem that almost all employers have, where if you're running late for work, your buddy will call ahead and say, "Hey, can you punch me in? I'm running late. My badge is in this spot. I'm running late," what have you. Employers lose 3 to 7% of their annual payroll to buddy punching. And that's just not our number; it's a number from the American Payroll Association. So it comes up to be a really big number for small and large employers.
Great. And so one of the things that you were kind enough to send ahead was your case study on FTS International, where you actually piloted a project, and it's great to see with a really early stage tech startup that you actually have an enterprise customer that has used the product with good result. And I want to focus in on that 2 or 3% because when I read the case study, which I found to be well written, it had nice graphics, it had nice pie charts. I thought that was actually a really useful piece and should serve you well. But one question I had was it looked like you saved them maybe 2%. And so you had some pretty significant development costs that Kairos absorbed, looks like almost $50,000. And it led me to wonder how scalable this is and when you have enough where you've kind of recouped Kairos's lead-in expense for a new customer. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Actually, that's a really good question. To your design points, I'll just start by saying we're a bunch of ex-Apple developers. I'm an ex-Apple employee, so we take design really seriously, even in our documents and things of that nature. So we try to be very consistent in that regard. To answer your question about the implementation costs of the platform, FTSI is a little special because they requested a bunch of customizations to the product. And so going through that process took some time and some expense for us to close that deal, and we're still in the process of closing that deal. As a matter of fact, the results of that test were from a proof of concept where we took six of their 40 or 50 teams across the country and did a test. To your point, this wasn't a blind test, so these folks knew they were filling out a manual timesheet and knew they were using the Kairos solution, and still we saved them 2%. So it really speaks well to kind of what the potential savings could be. Um, there are a bunch of things we can do to allow people to enter the platform faster, enter the funnel faster without any less friction or less cost to Kairos. And we find that the small, medium-sized businesses, folks that are 1,000 employees, 5,000 employees, or less, tend to be a little easier. After you get above maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 10,000 employees, tends to be a little bit of a longer sales cycle and implementation cost.
That's really helpful, and enterprise always has a longer sales cycle, and certainly larger companies have a longer sales cycle for a new product like this. I guess one interesting thing is I'm not sure that it was clear in the case study that this was not a blind test. So I didn't catch the fact that these people knew that they were being watched and still there was a 2% savings. And it would be amazing if you could do a case study that showed what a blind test would save because you speak about people clocking in for an entire work week in one day and having 16-hour days routinely. And so obviously there's employee over-reporting, which we'll use as a euphemism for dishonesty, right? And if you're talking about 6 or 8% or 10% savings, in that kind of context, that's a really compelling case study where a 2% savings left me wondering how big an enterprise, what's minimum efficient scale, how big an enterprise would need to do this, because 2% might not be worth the hassle for someone with 100, 200 employees that use time cards. So I think it would be really helpful to see if you can get that kind of case study. Then the next question I think investors would have is, these folks tried it, they benefited from it. Did they find it compelling enough to double down and say, okay, let's roll this out to more places?
Yep. And in their case, tried it, liked it, even loved it, I would say. One of their challenges, and we're finding this is a challenge in pretty much any enterprise, they didn't have the HR policies and procedures in place to support things like iPads and maybe iPads being stolen or how that's handled, or facial recognition itself and what the rules and regulations around that, retention, things of that nature are. So it takes them, it's going to take them a little bit of time to write those rules and get those standards in place before they can fully implement the product. Again, we are a bit of a, for more of an early adopting kind of company. So in enterprises, there's some things they need to do to kind of close that gap. However, the good news is because the savings are so clear and the savings are so big, we're able to get buy-in from the senior executives to want to make those changes.
Hopefully, you'll be able to smooth out some of those on ramping impediments on a go forward basis, because those will be really important.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to an earlier point that you made about the extent to which there was customization required for this particular customer. One thing I'd be cautious about, sometimes startups that land the first enterprise customer or the second or third enterprise customer are so willing to do things that they end up becoming a custom shop for that customer and creating a system that is specific to that customer. And I think it's important to just be mindful of that and use your own gut to help ascertain whether you're sort of veering too much into the, we're making a great product for this one company, but a lot of this isn't going to be translatable.
You
So
know,
just sort of keep that's something to keep in mind.
Again, a good point. I've learned that from experience as well. We had a contract, an agreement with J.C. Penney early on, very large, big scale. We did a lot of kind of customizations for those folks as well. The challenge is that we were doing facial recognition for in the customer space actually. And the challenge is that when Ron Johnson left and the CTO left, you know, the entire thing obviously went on hold because of the organizational changes. And we again put some time, money, and effort into that relationship. So yeah, I've learned that definitely the hard way, and I'm very mindful.
Great, great. Yeah, and it's an unfortunate experience, but welcome to the world of enterprise, right?
Exactly.
I was doing some research online about the company, and I noticed that you guys are Kairos.io. Someone else is Kairos.com. I know Kairos comes from mythology, so it's a word that people will use in other arenas. And I also did a quick search on the USPTO.gov. It doesn't look like you've yet filed a trademark. Are you thinking that you're going to want to stick with Kairos as the company name and identifier?
We like Kairos as a name. We're really particularly focused on helping companies in the moment right now and make the most of their bottom line by using intelligent technology in the moment. So we think it makes a lot of sense for us. You're right about the challenge that it is a word existing, and we don't own Kairos.com. A couple of mitigating factors there. We plan on purchasing Kairos.co. We also plan on purchasing Kairos.com and filing with some of the trademarks and patent pieces that you mentioned post this next round of funding. We're in the middle of raising a seed round now, with eyes to a Series A later. Um, at our current size, we couldn't take on those challenges, but we do plan on with fundraising that we will be one of the first things that we do.
Great. And the name recognition is probably less important for an early stage enterprise company as opposed to a consumer facing company where you want to build goodwill with consumers over time. And so it's really important that they remember your name. But you might want to think a little bit about branding and some of the implications of other people using the name. And obviously, having a name from mythology has not hurt plenty of other companies that have mined that same literature and history for other good company names. But I wanted to throw it out there because you guys are not the first thing that comes up in a Google search on Kairos. Not
That's great.
expecting you to, but you just want to think a little bit about some of the branding. And I saw that you do have a little bit of a Twitter presence, which is good, and some other things. Do you have questions that for me that I can help you with? Since I want to make sure that I answer some of your questions too.
If you're a seed stage or early stage company, how do you prove to venture capital firms that you have a big idea? It's worth investing in.
So it's a great question. And in your case, so one of the things that I think would be really helpful for you to figure out is, and this is why I think a blind study would be really helpful, is how long, if a customer had to pay for the customization, or if a customer had to pay for the product, how long would it take for the customer to recoup the cost and start getting money back? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? And then also, you could talk about the size of the market, but how many companies are having people punch in, and what's the kind of minimum size company that would benefit from this? What's the sort of efficient starting point for that? Give people a sense of the size of the market and whether it's growing, or in an automation driven world or a technologized world, is the use of punching in actually shrinking? I don't know the answer to that, but I think spelling those people out and showing your market segment that it's big, vibrant, and growing, those things would be, I think, really helpful to make this more compelling. Obviously, the technology works, or you wouldn't have the case study. And because you have the case study, I think people are really going to dig into it. There's a saying in venture, there's, if you want a euphoric exit price, you want some buying company to pay lots and lots of money. There's nothing like having financial statements to mess that up.
Thank you so much for your time, Ed.
I've enjoyed chatting, and if there are follow-up questions that you have, I'm happy to stay in touch and be helpful in other ways.
You'll definitely be here from me for sure.
Thanks so much.